Welcome back, MTG Joe here. We're here for another installment of the weekly meta breakdown where we look at the top performing decks on the MTG Arena ladder. The goal of this video is to look at the top performing decks right now in standard best of one. If you're looking for best of three, explore, historic, whatever variation of the formats, check the playlist. Details are below. For like all those other formats, we try to cover them each week based on the availability of data and kind of how quick things change. We'll kind of take a look like that. But we cover everything here, and we get the stats that you're seeing on the screen from Untapped GG, companion tool that runs alongside your Arena client, tracks win rates, loss rates, in-game overlays, whole bunch of cool functionality. Link is in the video description if you want to get started on a whole bunch of it for free. But I will paste these deck lists as well in the video description, so you can click and kind of go from there. Quick programming note, if you haven't done so already and you enjoy this type of content, drop a sub on the channel. It's free, it's easy, it helps the channel grow. We have a goal of reaching 10,000 subs by June of this year. So it's a little over 3,000 subs. So it's a little aggressive, but I think as a community, if the sport's there, we can reach that goal. It'd be awesome for me if we can help that out. But we'll jump into it. So I'm going to do it kind of two batches this week. So I'm going to look at the top Mythic decks, and then I went Platinum to Mythic, and I pulled out some out of the norm kind of decks as well, from Plat to Mythic rank, so kind of at the lower rank what people are playing, to give a little bit more diversity. Some folks have asked comments of like, some of the meta's a little stale, can you try to help find us some new decks? So trying to do a bit of both here and go from there. So from January 14th through to the 21st, Mythic rank only, we have 24,000 matches played, and the top performing deck of the week is Mono Soldiers. We have a 65.5% win rate with this deck, and there's kind of two variations of the Soldiers deck. You have the mono white and the blue white version. By going mono white, you get access to a 1-mana removal spell and lay down arms. This lets you kind of get a scalable exile-based removal spell, something useful to deal with stuff like Sheoldred or any of like bigger creatures, even in the mirror, just kind of dealing with the Brutal Cathar or something like that. Outside of that, the only other removal in the deck is the Brutal Cathar, as mentioned. With this deck, you get access to Mishra's Foundry and just kind of a cleaner mana base. You don't get the pump land for Soldiers in the mana base, however. You also don't get card advantage. So this version's a little bit more all-in, and you're kind of dealt with the hand you get. You don't get the ability of Sky Strike Officers to draw you cards. You don't have mana sinks really for flooding. Your only mana sinks are Valiant Veteran and the Yodian. These cards get some advantage by Guardian of Benalia because you can discard them, so you still get to activate their abilities at least. But generally speaking, you don't necessarily want to discard Valiant because it does provide you a Lord effect in the deck, which is good. Outside of that, you got 8 1-drops, the Mana Sink and Recruitment Officer, which thank you for someone this week pointed out because I got messed this up in the Explorer video. This is any creature, 3 CMC or less, not just Soldiers. So read the card, Joe. It helps you out. Thalia for tax, Brutal Cathar's removal, Siege Veteran for counters and kind of removal, gives you some more Soldiers. And then just Myrel, which you let Myrel stick, Myrel wins games on its own. This is kind of Adeline, but on crack. So just kind of the big top end threat of the mono white Soldiers list. You then go to MonoRed Burn, which is at 61% win rate, 110 games. And this deck here is looking to leverage Mechanized Warfare, not Chandra, on the screen, to deal additional points of damage for any red spell. So each copy gets scaled in that regard. So things like your pings from Kumano or Voldaren Epiture both deal 2, 3, 4 damage depending on the number of copies you have. And the Festivities also scales in terms of a one-sided board wipe, which plays nicely with this here. You have Keswick's Reckless Impulse for card advantage along with the Chandra. Squee is kind of a recurable threat. You have Play with Fire, Lightning Strike as removal, and then you have threats in Monastery Swiftspear, Phoenix Chick, and a Keswick Flame Breather as ways to deal incidental damage. The Flame Breather is also nice with Warfare because that damage scales as well. 3 copies of Mishra's Foundry in the mana base. We then go to Mono White Aggro, so different Mono White deck. So Mono White has a lot of aggro cards. Mono White's just really good, even in the mid-range kind of Wandering Emperor versions. So 60% win rate on this one here. And I kind of like, while Soldiers had a higher win rate, I kind of like the composition of this deck a little bit more. You could play laydown arms in this if you'd like, but with this version here, you have Guardian of New Benalia with the Sarah Paragon package, which to me seems like a better value because the stuff you throw away, you can recast it with Sarah Paragon. Even during like your combat step, you can give Guardian Indestructible and then cast that spell instead of from your hand, from your graveyard. So you get some utility that way there. Just a little bit more value. And we just had someone subscribe to the channel, so thank you, Daniel Sanchez. We have Thalia here for tax, Intrepid Adversary as another Lord effect. So because you're not soldiers based, Intrepid Adversary is your Lord effect. Hopeful Initiate is also just super useful with a whole bunch of counters that can be put onto things. In this deck here, it's really just the Hopeful Initiate counters. Nothing else really gets counters itself, but it allows you to just have Artifact and Enchantment Hate if needed, Fable the Mirror Breaker, Wedding Announcement, stuff like that if you run into it in the best of one format. You have tax effects, so this is kind of like the Elite Spellbinder with the Anointed Peacekeeper to tax your opponent. You have Brutal Cathar removal, Adeline for Go Wide, Sarah Paragon to rebuy, and then you have Steel Seraph. Well, although in the 6 mana slot, this is really most of the time a 3 mana spell. And the biggest thing here is like if you look at something with Adeline, a lot of times you get chump blocked. Giving it flying or lifelink just kind of help you offset the race. All the modes are super relevant. Even just being able to give something vigilance, for example, if you kind of anticipate your opponent might have a Wandering Emperor, lets you kind of go in and attack in that regard. Mana base, Mishra's Foundry, some Aganjos, and some basic planes. We then go to the Azorious Soldiers deck at 59.5, so just shy of 60%. We'll call it 60%. We're going to round up. We're going to give you that C grade on your test. So a lot of similarities, Recruitment Officers, Yodian, no laydown arms. Between the two Soldiers deck, I do think I like the blue-white version better. Harbin is just a great card, so even on its own stats, 2 mana 3/2 flyer gets through a lot of the ground creatures. It lets you kind of just surprise kill your opponent too by having 5 soldiers out. You have things like Resolute Reinforcement mixed into there. Sky Strike Officer providing you card advantage is really big. And then just access to the Fortified Beachhead is big. Like, play 4 of these. I don't know why this version's playing 3. Cut a island and play another Fortified Beachhead. This card's just too good not to play. Your entire deck soldiers, so it's basically untap land. And it's just really useful to have in that regard. So play 4, like don't play 3. And I'll try to remember to just fix that in the deck import. But again, just a lot of similarities of what we covered in the mono white soldiers list otherwise. We then go to Grixis midrange, 58% win rate deck. This deck is very, very powerful in best of 3. Reasonable in best of 1 as well, but the kind of knock in best of 1 is, and it's similar to times with control decks, you kind of get the wrong half. Like a Duress against mono white soldiers, mono white aggro does nothing. I generally don't love Duress in best of 1. It's kind of fringe, and a lot of the decks are low to the ground aggro, so even if they have non-creature spells, you have a very limited window where Duress is useful. I would probably just go up like another copy of Abrade and another copy of Cut Down, or go like a Graveyard Trespasser. Just another kind of life gain element's useful. Even the card that I'm seeing a lot of is Gix Command, just being able to have a sweeper. I would even just go Gix Command, to be honest, even just to rebuy, give you lifelink. There's a whole bunch of variability with that card. It's very useful, and you're seeing that a lot more in the best of 3 versions being incorporated. But the deck itself, basically, I only have rare and mythic good cards and removal. What should I build? Well, Fable the Mirror Breaker, Shieldred, Invoke Despair, Liliana for Hand Hate, kind of mixed in with Corpse Appraiser, Blood Tithe Harvester, a card advantage, removal plays really nicely with Reflection, scattering of different removal spells, and Bankbuster for card advantage. This is kind of the boogeyman of the best of 3 format. We then go to Monoblack. So they're calling this one Control, Midrange. I kind of differentiate between like the Midrange and then the aggro version just based on the number of 1-drops they have. So this is a 57% win rate deck. So I'd say this is more in line with the mid-range focus deck. The aggro version usually has at least another 1-drop in here. It has the 2-mana Shade that you could pump mana into and then exile. The name is escaping me at this moment, and it usually has a copy of Gix in here. The Planeswalker heavier version is a little bit more mid-range focused. Sorin coming in here is something that we haven't seen in a while, to be honest. Most of the decks have foregone Sorin, just either play another copy of Shieldred in here or just kind of go lower on the curve. But you got your 8 removal spells, just kind of the core, good black cards, Invoke Despair on the top end, Shelly to kind of clean up there. I'd probably play the Grixis version over this, but you get cleaner, slightly cleaner mana. I think the Grixis cards on average, piece for piece, just having access to Fable, the removal is usually a little bit better. So then, like I said, we're looking at Platinum to Mythic here. So same diet span, 250,000 games. Like there's this MonoRed aggro list that's putting up some results, just more creature heavy. So you have like Reckless Stormseeker, you got a Skitterbeam Battalion on the top end, Raiju. I don't know how I feel about this. The burn version seems a little bit more interactive. Because like things like Swift Spear with only, well, I guess you have 12 spells here, but I never really liked Shivan Devastator. I think Feldon's pretty medium as well. And even like Stormseeker's fine on the play, but it's better in like Explorer where you could turn to it with the Llanowar Elves. I could include this mono-red version if you're interested, but I think the burn version is a little bit better, and we're seeing that as being the more represented deck in the Mythic rank. Like if we quickly open this, we can apply the filters, see if this even shows up in other ranks. No, so I wouldn't really capture that one there, but we got MonoGreen Stompy. So this one's a 62% win rate deck, Platinum to Mythic, and just doing our little check. Yeah, so it's Platinum rank that is predominantly played or lower. So the biggest thing with MonoGreen is it needs things to stick to the battlefield, and there's a lot of removal in the format. Now, things like Cut Down could quickly become obsolete, a Braid could be obsolete. You do have some powerful top-end threats. So you have things like Silverback Elder, Defiler Vigor, Uvenwald Oddity. Autumn lets you play cards at the top of your library. Jewel Thief for Trample. Kumano helps you find lands, gives all your +1 counter synergies. Trample plays really nice with the Quirion Ranger as well. You have some ramp elements in Lone Speaker and Gala Greeters as well to help you get ahead on curve. The thing I don't like about this deck is the Crystal Grottos. If you're going to be playing like a non-green producing land, especially in a deck that's got like triple green, double green, a lot like that, play Mishra's Foundry. I'd probably play 2 Mishra's Foundry and then play the 21st Forest instead of just this configuration. Then we have Rakdos Mishra, 58% win rate. Let's see if it shows up in Diamond at all. It does not. So again, more Platinum focused deck. So this deck here is looking to be like Rakdos Aggro. So lower on the curve, you have Kumano and Okiba that both can flip early. So 1-drops that become creatures on turn 3. The Kumano can have haste. This is a menace creature, which is nice to just give you some evasion. Blood Tithe, Tenacious Underdog package. You got some removal spells mixed in with Cut Down, Go for the Throat, and Infernal Grasp. You have Reflections. You have Gix for card advantage, Phyrexian Dragon Engine that melds with the Mishra on kind of your top end, and then a couple copies of Shieldred in here. Mana base pretty clean. You got your channel lands and your dual lands mixed into there. And then lastly, we have Boros Heroic. Again, just going to do a quick scan. Nothing in the higher ranks. So this is a kind of Angel Fire Ignition deck. So you have Illuminator Virtuoso, Electrostatic Infantry that both get bigger when they get targeted. In the case of Infantry, just any instant or sorcery spell cast, Illuminator needs to be targeted. You have Prowess as well from the Monastery Swiftspear. And then you have Baird, which if a creature has greater power than its base at the end step, you get a 1/1 Soldier. So there's a lot of pump effects, just things naturally growing through Prowess, type abilities, counters, stuff like that. You have the Burn package in here. I guess this one doesn't really play Lightning Strike. You have the Play with Fires, Lauren Escape for protection, Mono for another creature, Homestead for counters, Anger for trample and card draw. And then the big payoff here is Angel Fire Ignition, which just really helps swing games. It gives you the ability to get aggressive, vigilance, lifelink in there, indestructible, push through damage, and then lets you recast it again. Also plays nicely with the Virtuoso where you can discard it, get the counter, and then cast it out of your graveyard if you're interested. So that's it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing, what you've been enjoying, and we'll catch you next week. And like I mentioned, if you can, hit that subscribe button, helps me out. And if you're already subscribed to the channel, as always, every comment, every like is greatly appreciated. I try to answer every comment, every question that comes through, as long as it is a reasonable comment, because sometimes we get YouTube comments that are just, you know how they are. But in any case, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great one, and stay safe out there.